Ladies and gentlemen, Hebrews and Shebrews, welcome to the Life Podcast, where we inspire you to thrive as peculiar people in a modern world. Today, we're doing that by talking to Fran Melo. We're going to talk to him about growing up in Brazil and how seeing witchcraft made him realize that the spiritual world was a thing and led him to the Father. We'll talk to him about how he eventually came into the Torah once he moved here into the United States, and how he founded multiple tech companies and almost lost himself to founder syndrome. Basically, his kind of explanation of becoming obsessed with this American dream, with the Cinderella story of starting a business and becoming uber successful, and how that almost became an idol in his life and took the place of his relationship with Yah, and then how he found his way again. If you're still doing your taxes and you're not already going to Goshen Tax and Consulting.com in order to get your finances from last year in order, then I don't know what to say to you, other than why not allow Kyle Smith, the CPA, and his team help you get more money back on your taxes this year and save you time and stress and headache. Just give it to the man. Give it to the man so that he can sort this out for you so you don't have to stress out about it. And then once you've done that, you could go back to Goshen Tax and Consulting.com and go to the consultancy aspect of the business. And if you have any kind of online thing that you're selling or trying to promote, whether it's a ministry or you're selling coffee like Shepherd's Crook Coffee, these people can help you improve your online presence in multifold. They do photography even. They do website design, and they do marketing. So they'll help get you in front of more people. Look, they're in front of you right now. So if they can sneak their way in front of you, then why can't they help you sneak your way in front of others? Go to Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com and put in code THELIFE to get 10% off either of these services. This is a warning to parents. This episode has a rather graphic description of witchcraft that Fran witnessed in Brazil, and that occurs at minute 34:30-ish to 37:15. So I would skip that for your kids. So without further ado, I give you Fran. Fran, welcome to the Life Podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Luke. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to hear your life story, man.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
Tell us a little about yourself. Tell us where you're from. Tell us also how you got saved and how you eventually realized the Torah was relevant to us.
Very cool. Yeah. So I am originally from Brazil. And my family started going to church when I was about 6 years old. So I kind of grew up in the church environment. And my parents, they had always been involved in church. They've always been involved in all the leadership and all the stuff they had to do in church. So I kind of grew up around, Christian folks, and we had people coming over to our house. My parents that were counselors that would, counsel couples, and we would also have services in our own house where folks would come. We would have a preacher that would come and do all of that. And so, but my personal experience, I actually raised my hand when I was 8 years old, but I didn't know the concept of grace. So I would do that every week. I would go to church and say, I messed up last week. I have to accept Christ again. And then one day my dad was like, hey, you don't need to go to the front of the church every week. All you need to do is let's sit down and I'm going to teach you how to pray. And so that's kind of like how it always started for me. And being from Brazil, from a region where there is a lot of witchcraft, kind of like, I think if I could compare, it would be like Louisiana of the United States. There's a lot of witchcraft and a lot of things. I saw a lot of spiritual things that made me never doubt the spiritual realm. And so I never went through any season in my life where I doubted, but there was a period of my life where I lost faith in the institution. And that is because I've been in churches and I used to be part of the worship team since I was 12. I played the drums, then I played the guitar, and we would go from church to church, and I would see kind of the same pattern in different churches, and those things kind of drove me away from wanting to be part of it. And at some point, I stopped believing at the whole thing, not God, but the institution. And I
Hmm.
was like, I don't want to be part of this anymore. And by the time I was 16, I was playing at for specific bands, and they would take me to different cities. And some of these bands were Christian bands, some of these bands were not Christian bands, but I got paid for it. And so I didn't really care about it. And eventually I met my wife online, and she was living here in the US. And so she's like, hey, she was 13 at the time, and we kept on talking online until she was probably 15 and I was 17. And I decided to say, hey, look, we've been talking for quite a while. My sister was already here in the US. She was going to Christ for the Nations. And I asked, hey, do you want to have this relationship? It's online, it's weird, but I'm willing to try. She said, "Yeah, let's try it." So her family was her parents. They were living here in Brazil. So I went from the equivalent of going from Louisiana to California to meet her parents. So I spent a month with them in their house, and they were very nice to receive me, take me over, and I played the drums with them. He's a pastor, and I asked them permission to come here to the U.S. and meet their daughter and start dating her. And her dad was like, "No way! I mean, not gonna let that happen. I mean, you're welcome in my house, but I'm not gonna let that happen." And so one day when he took me to the airport, I was like, "Hey, it's been 30 days. I spent all this time with you so we could get to know each other. I need you to just pray and give me your blessing because I'm gonna go to the US and I'm gonna meet your daughter." And he's like, "I'm not gonna do that because when you get there, she will see that you're ugly, you're short. She's not gonna like you, man. So just give up." And I was like, "No, I need to try." And so her mom was like, "Don't do that. Just pray for the kid and let him go." And so he gave me this generalized prayer, and it's like, "Lord, you know, let your will be done. Amen." And so and so I came to the US, I met her in person, and we just fell in love with each other. And like about a year later, we got married. And I didn't like it here. I wanted to go back, but she was like, "I grew up here. I want to stay here." Uh, but the way this connects with me going to the Torah is that I she loved going to church. She loved like worship nights, being part of groups. And at that stage, I was just, going through the motions of going to church, meeting people. Um, but everything felt so fake. I just couldn't stand it. And we went to multiple churches. The pattern is always the same. And then we finally settled at this mega church here in Dallas that we knew some people. We loved the folks there. And so we went there for over 7 years. But again, the pattern was the same. I've always had a relationship with the Lord. I've always sat down, took my time. Every morning I would sit down, read the Bible, and pray. And I had great experiences to the point where I could never deny that God existed. I never got to that point. But I didn't know how to pray because it was like, God, I don't understand. This seemed to be the thing that everybody tells me to do, but something is wrong. While at the same time, I know you. You exist. I've had experiences with you. You've spoken with me in many different ways. And I've experienced you. I've had cases in my life where I woke up and I heard God speaking to me. And it was something very specific that I had prayed about before. So like I know you exist, but I don't know how to correlate these two things. And then in 2016, I was going through some craziness and dealing with a little bit of depression, anxiety. And I remember my wife had left the house and I prayed and I said, Lord, I am at the verge of just leaving everything. I don't want this. I don't want to be part of this institution. People are fake. And I started complaining to God. And I was like, I grew up seeing my parents praying that you shall make us the head and not the tail, above and not below. Right now, I am the tail. I am below. I'm not happy. I don't understand why. And that was the prayer. And then my wife came home and she's like, let's go to worship night. And I was like, "Ah, sure. I will go with you. You go inside the church. I'll stay outside because I cannot go in. My heart is broken." She's like, okay. She went there. She got in. I stayed outside. There was a couch and I sat there. And then this lady came by and she was nervous. Her eyes are like wide open. And she's like, hey, can I say something? And I'm like, sure. I mean, it's kind of weird, but go for it. She's like, I just want to pray for you and read a Bible verse. I'm like, okay. And so she prayed and she's like, Lord, would you open his eyes? Would you help him see? And I'm like, hey man, that's awesome. And then she opened the Bible and she opened on that verse and she said, you gotta read the whole thing. And she said, and she read it, that the Lord will place you above and not below, the head and not the tail, if you keep my precepts and my commandments. And then she closed the Bible and said, thank you. And she left. And that placed that bug in my head. I was like, how would she know? I need to read the whole thing. And then that's when it all started for me, 2016. And so that's when I was like, I got to understand this. I mean, this is definitely God speaking to me because I was by myself. Nobody saw me praying. And so that was the beginning of me going after, like, what does that mean to keep your precepts or keep your commandments? And that's when I really got into the Torah, got into like, I need to understand this. I started going to synagogues. I started talking to folks. It was a journey of about 2 years and a half until I came to the conclusion that I was like, these are things that are important to us and we have to live this out in our lives. But that was kind of the trigger for me to start diving into the Torah.
Today's sponsor is Matthew Martin's Whole Bible Community. They have a beautiful site that's operating perfectly. I've been testing it out myself for weeks. It is a social network for the Torah observer. It features video calls, chat, messaging. It also allows you to put your fellowship on there. You can create an individual profile. You can create a profile for your business so people know you're a Torah observant locksmith or plumber. You can also search for fellowships and events and feast days if you want in your area so you can find other people. This is the pain point. This is the ultimate pain point of those in Torah. Everyone reaches out to us and they say, Luke, do you recommend a way that I can find fellowship near me? Or Luke, there is no one around who believes the same way I do. Well, Whole Bible Community is aimed at solving that problem. This is one of the key pain points for us in this walk, where there are all these disparate small fellowships, all these basically Bible study groups that meet on Shabbat. And they want to meet other people, but they don't want to be mobbed by weirdos who are just finding their information online. So all of those problems are eliminated with Whole Bible Community. You can make a website basically for your fellowship so that you can show what time you meet. You could show what calendar you're on so people can search via calendar and find feast days that they want on that operate on their same calendar. It is calendar agnostic. It is Torah segment agnostic. So there's Messianics on there, there's Hebrew roots on there, there's Torah people on there, there's whole Bible believer people on there. It's basically anyone who believes the law is for us today. It is live now. It is free now. Go and sign up. It will be free forever. Go and sign up, put your info on there, add me as a friend, add your fellowship on there so we can start connecting immediately. Now, the site is going to grow. There's going to be a marketplace where the business people can put all their business info on there and they can find one another on there. That's going to be very exciting, and we are going to keep you abreast of all of those releases as soon as they come. Go to wholebiblecommunity.com and sign up for free. And I have questions about just even your early life too, but before I lose these thoughts about what you just said, did you notice a change in your life after that when you started to do this at some point?
Not initially. I noticed the change because I remember I started at the Ten Commandments And I was like, yeah, I do it. I do it. I do it. And I'm like, Sabbath. Why don't we do this? I mean, why? And so I started being pretty hardcore in a sense of I don't understand this really well, but I'm gonna try. And I remember sitting down with my wife and I say, because we had this thing that we are always done every Saturday. We would pray in the morning, and it was like a mini service, just a family service between me and my wife. But we would go about our day and still work and do all the other stuff. So it's like, how about we just do this thing, but we don't work on Saturdays. We're just gonna, stop working. And we didn't understand, Shabbat or Friday night, none of that. We just woke up on Saturday and that's Sabbath. We don't do anything else. We just rest. And it's funny because when we started doing that, I think two things happened. First, I was thirsty. I wanted to know more, and things started becoming clear, and I started understanding things better. That was the first thing. And the second thing is, I didn't notice, but all that pressure that I was feeling, anxiety and depression, it kind of faded away in a way that I barely noticed. I just, and there's a thing that there's an event that happened that really illustrate this really well. I've always been super crazy about Christmas. Like I started listening to Christmas songs in June. And so and so Christmas was a big thing for me. And when I came to the conclusion that Christmas, I shouldn't be celebrating Christmas, it broke me. I was like, man, that's gonna be hard. And I remember throughout that year that we came to this conclusion that we already had two kids at that point, and my wife were getting ready for Shabbat, and I put this song on YouTube on the TV, and they had the challah bread, the wine, in the Torah, and this song is playing. And I remember sitting down and being just filled with joy, like really joyful. And I didn't have any specific reason to feel that way that night. And I just feel like God was saying, look, you would have to wait a whole year for this. You have it every week now. And that was the trigger for me. And I was like, oh, I get it. Okay. Okay, I can't forget about it. And since then, it hasn't been an issue because every Christmas I'd be like, oh, I gotta close my ears because all these songs and all that, it's like it's pulling me back. But after that experience, I was like, yeah, God already gave me something that is every week, and it fills me with joy. And s- Shabbat and Sabbath for me, it's essentially that anchor. No matter how bad the week is, I always look forward to it. I'm like, it's just 2 more days until we get to that point, and it's like it just recharges me. And so, uh, the first difference I noticed was that the anxiety and the fear and the stress and the pressure that I was feeling kind of faded away. It wasn't like an overnight thing, but slowly it disappeared. And the second thing that I noticed was I was super thirsty to know more, to learn more, and it was like everything that I learned. It was like, oh man, this is amazing. This is great. And I think that the only thing I felt during that season is that you want everybody to know about it. You want to go crazy. Like everybody needs to know this. And, I'm going to call everyone and you want to teach everyone. I want to show it to everyone. And I call it a mistake because not everyone is ready to listen and to get into that. And so it took me about a year to realize that. But other than that, it was 2018, for instance, is the year that we actually took the whole year. We did everything like we did all the events, we did Shabbat, we did all the things, and we're fully into it. And I still remember as one of the best years we've had in a sense of we were in debt. Um and I remember just praying to God saying, Lord, I don't care to be rich anymore, but I want to have my life in order. Would you help me? And like things fell into place little by little. And I think in that first phase, that's kind of how it is. Later on, you face more battles and you learn to hold on to God and to the Torah and to your faith, even though things are not going perfectly well. But in that initial phase, it was like almost the honeymoon phase where things kind of fell into place. It's almost like God saying, let me give you some break so you can learn more. And so I had about 2 years since from 2016 to 2018 where I was barely working. I was researching, reading, and going to places. And lots of things happened. Like I was meant to go, a friend of ours suggested that we would go meet someone at their property. We ended up in the wrong place, and it was Sabbath. It was Saturday, and it was a tour group celebrating Shabbat, Sabbath, and they received us. They didn't know who we were, and I didn't know who they were, and we became great friends. And we, to this day, we still check on each other. How does that happen? And so those a lot of things happened that I know it wasn't because I'm smart and I orchestrated everything. And I know that God really placed those things in at the right time for us. And so again, I'll pause here, but the short answer is the two differences was the pressure we felt going to church and the anxiety of competing at church. Everybody's so successful, everybody's so great. And why don't I have that? And they have that. What's going on with that? That pressure went away because the priorities changed. And the second thing is, I was so thirsty for learning more, for discovering more of God and Torah. And it's like my mind was just renewed and a bunch of other stuff was just thrown away. And now it's this new thing that's in my head 24/7 that I can't stop thinking about. Those are the two major differences that I noticed, but it took time. It wasn't like overnight. After that lady spoke with me and then I got home, it wasn't like that. It was like it placed the bug in my head. And from that moment on, I started I'm going to call it a journey where little by little I got to that point where I couldn't stop reading more and try to understand more and so forth.
All right, so how did people react? How did your wife react?
Yeah. Well, at first, she didn't understand. And she was like, I'm a little skeptical. And and it took us and I just she was really gracious to say, I'm gonna do this thing with you. But I was really praying intensely. So it was like, God, would you please bring her to the same conclusion? Uh, but I would try my best to show things. Slowly, she also came to the same conclusion. But my family, parents and siblings, it sounded really weird for them at first. And but when we sat down, every single time we sat down and we talked Bible, I would show certain things that they would be like, wow, I never seen this before. How come I've read the whole Bible three, 4 times or 10 times, never seen this before? And I was like, me either. Like, I understand what you're saying because we've always read this with this lens that led us to think this, but it's actually that. And so for about a year or two, maybe I'd be sending people random messages like, did you know this? And so I know it was really weird for everybody initially. And then and so the basic stuff, I think everybody understood, like, the diet and let's avoid this, let's avoid that. And here's the biblical reason, here's the scientific reason, because I like to bring these two things together. And most of my family understood that and but it's not an easy change. And to be honest with you, look, I don't think that change can take place if Yah is not actually doing the work in your life. If it's just knowledge, I don't think it happens. And I'm saying this because I know folks that know they have a lot of the knowledge, but they don't have the conviction. And so they're like, yeah, that's interesting. And did you know that they add stuff to it and it's valuable piece of information, but they don't have the conviction. So with that in mind, that's when I started, saying, I'm going to pray more and I'm going to be available and I'm going to witness, but I'm not going to just bang the Bible on people's head and try to place it into their heads. Because if they're not ready, it just won't happen. And I'm just being annoying. And so to this day, and I have friends today, look, that they don't follow the Torah, but when I go to their house, they make sure that everything is in place. In fact, there's this really good friend of mine. He's like a brother to me. We had an event in his house, and he's cooking the barbecue, and somebody shows up with sausage, and this guy shows up and is like, "I want this, man. Go ahead, throw it in the grill." He's like, "Wait," and he took all the meat out, cleaned everything, and then he's like, "Friend, you got everything you need. I'm gonna now throw in the sausage." So I am surrounded by folks that understand, and they help me in the process. but the conviction hasn't come to them yet. Even though I can be that guy that's unknowing, I always try to show it in, which I've done in the past. But I feel like my job at some point it becomes more of praying and witnessing than just repeatedly trying to push this into their heads and make that change. It won't happen. And so I kind of took a step back and I just pray intensely. And it's actually in my prayer list where every single day I go through it and I say all of their names and I say, Lord, the conviction you give to me, this change that happened inside and then displayed outside, would you allow them to witness and to feel that at the same way? Because it's it's freedom. We can get into that in a little bit, but I've struggled with certain things in my life that once I came to Torah, again, I didn't even notice, but it was gone. So it truly is freedom. And I feel like I wish everybody could experience that too, but I can't force them. And so it is my prayer that they would enjoy that. And the way I describe this is I can tell you how might have heard somebody saying this before. I can explain to you how a strawberry tastes, but it will never be the same as actually tasting it. And so I just feel like I keep explaining to people how it tastes like, but until they actually decide to taste it, they won't really know. And so my only way right now is let me pray and hope that one day they will taste and they will say, come taste and see that the Lord is good. And they will say, well, I'm never going back again. And so that's really where I stand today. There's folks that I love and that I pray for them all day, every day. I meant to say, and I have their names, and I just hope and witness as much as I can.
Do you still pray every morning, basically?
I was very consistent until I had my third child, and then it got really hard. and and also, I was running a company in Brazil, and the time zone is really different. Um, and so I had to wake up super early just to be late on calls. And so I would have to wake up even earlier in order to have that time. So for 4 years and a half, I struggled with that. And so the way I tried to make up for it was I would go for walks and I would turn those walks into prayer or just listening to a song and just because some days, to be very honest with you, Luke, some days are hard, man. It's really hard. And some days I come to sit down and I'm here to pray and I can't even pray. I'm so tired and stressed. There's so much going on. And what I like to do, and I find it to be very helpful, is like I just say, yeah, I am here. I'm here and I want to be here with you. I will read and then I'm just going to rest with you because I can't say anything else. And it's crazy how encouraging that is to me. It just, it is very encouraging. So some days I'm like full blown praying, going through my list. Some days it's kind of like you're just reading a list and it feels empty and it doesn't really connect, but I'm going through my process. And some days I can't even do that. I'll just sit down there and, be there. And that has been helpful to me in times of trials. Let's put it that way.
That's cool. I ask about that because my wife and I were just talking about we need to be praying in the morning more, and I'd like to start doing that. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. I'm starting again since now I'm not running a company in Brazil. I'm back into the US time zone. And so it's been easier because if I wake up at 6:30, I have plenty of time before, the world starts moving. And so to me it's been easier now and I'm starting to get back into that schedule. But I've been trying not to be too strict because if I miss one day and you start putting yourself down, then you switch the whole thing into this, you know, let's do this through the strength of my muscles and make it happen. So I try to be a little easygoing in a sense of like today I woke up 3 times, couldn't sleep well. I'm gonna take in that time. The Lord knows my heart, and I would take my time to go. And at the end of the day, I'll go for my run, and I'll take my time to pray. Um, and all of that to say, because sometimes we just try to take our relationship with God as this like very rigid thing, as if He's like this father that if you mess up, I'm gonna punish you. And I think that isn't healthy. At least for me, it hasn't been. But I just feel like like my kids, for instance, we homeschool, and so we have our times. And but if I see that they're tired, there won't be any benefit of them getting up and try to get through the schoolwork. I don't want them to rest. Get your body back into the way it should be, so you can learn well. And that's kind of the way I look at it. And so some days I just need it, no matter how bad or how tired I am. I need it. I need to be there. And so I'll get up. And what I've done, Luke, is sometimes I take a pillow and a blanket. I'll go to my office and just lay down there because I want to be there in a sense of like, Lord, I came here to be with you, even if I fall asleep here. And that is helpful to me. But if it's not possible, I'm not going to be like, oh, I messed up. I'm the worst person in the world. And I'm saying this because that's what I've done in the past. And I try not to do that anymore.
I like hearing your experience. It's helpful. It's helpful. It's real. It's real, man. That's how it is. We know how it is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I'd like to get into then your life after that and up to this day, but I want to jump back to early childhood in Brazil because of something that happened to my dad's mom. So before we had this call, I told you he grew up, he spent his early years in Brazil, and you mentioned about the spiritual witchcraft stuff. Well, she totally changed there. My grandpa thought it was something voodoo-y connected to this. And after that point, like she basically lost her mind for the rest of her life. Um, sadly. And so, can you talk about any of that stuff that you saw? You mentioned that you saw some of this, and that's what made you realize that there's definitely a spiritual world.
definitely. So I'm from this part of Brazil. It's called Bahia. That's the state, and it's well known for witchcraft. And Recife is from Pernambuco, which is a different state. My whole family, they're all from Pernambuco, that state where your dad was going to. Um, but my family moved to Bahia. That's where I kind of grew up, and there's witchcraft everywhere. Like in fact, my house was in between four, I guess I can call it witchcraft house, where people would go and pay somebody to do a certain, you know, a certain thing. Uh, and it was a common thing for us to wake up in the middle of the night with hearing like the drums and things like that, where people they're sacrificing chickens and things like that. And it was really common. So going to church, and again, in South America, for some reason, that's so much more real than it is in here. I don't know why, but you see people being possessed. And it's a very freaking thing. In fact, in our house, when we would bring people over, there's moments where we're praying and somebody would just, you know, get possessed and their voice would change, their facial expression would change, they would behave in a certain way, and then people would pray. And, it was a really a real thing happening there. I could not deny because there's no way you can convince me that was a natural thing, somebody pretending. In fact, I've seen people pretending before. In fact, I have some stories from my father-in-law. He's a pastor, and he's great at catching that. In fact, there's this guy that walked into his church and he was pretending to be possessed, and he's like, "Let me pray for you here on the side." And the guy's throwing a fit, and he slaps him on the face, and I stop it. The guy, man, you didn't have to do that. So it's like, well, how come you're pretending to be possessed and you're disturbing the service? But so that happens too. But you can literally see, like, I saw an old lady, seven guys trying to hold her down. They couldn't. And then she threw a pew, like wooden pew, away. I don't think it's natural. And I was probably 12 years old. That really freaked me out. I couldn't sleep for weeks. And so I saw things like that. And the other thing I saw that really, I'm going to say traumatized me is so I had this really good friend and his grandmother used to get paid to do those things and so on. And so I wanted to take him to church. And he said, well, I will go to church with you if you go to my grandmother's house and participate in one of these, events. I was like, I'm willing to do it, let's do it. I was 14. And man, I regret it so much because when we got there, and you're asking to describe it, and it gets kind of heavy. So I don't know how far we can go on this, but feel free to stop me. Um, but this lady, which was my friend's mother, she got a chicken that was still alive, and she ate it. Like the thing was still raw and alive. And as she was doing it, she was drinking this alcoholic beverage that's like 51% alcohol, and she drank the whole bottle. And I was looking at it. I was like, this cannot be normal. And then she started shaking her head so fast that, again, I don't think it's human. And then his grandmother started saying, don't kill her. You don't need to kill her. And the thing stopped and said, I want another chicken. They grabbed another chicken and she ate another chicken. And as she was done, then she came to her senses and she started throwing up. And then it was her again. And I saw that and I was like, man, I was freaked out and I was asking my friend, I'm like, why would you do this? And at the end, they ask for things. There's like things that they ask for. And I went back home and honestly, I couldn't be by myself for quite a while because I would think of that. I'm like, man, those things exist. This is crazy. And then I took him to church. It's like, it's your turn now. Let's go. As we go to church, we get right at the door and he's like, I can't go in. My eyes are getting all dark and I'm gonna pass out. I can't go in. And I'm like, dude, just hold my hand. We're gonna go into the church and you come with me. He couldn't. He just said he'd be dizzy and he would pass out. So it turns out he never actually got inside the church. And I was like, man, I went through all of that for nothing. And so these are some of the things. And there's a guy actually that used to go to the same church that I used to go to, and his dad was a leader into this group of witchcraft folks and in a different town. And he was a great guy. He was in leadership, but every once in a while, every 2 years or so, just like you described, he would turn into someone completely different. And I thought we could be some sort of mental illness, could be something. I don't know what it was, but he would be like, he would walk into church and say, I have a grenade. I'm going to explode everybody. Like totally different. And he would go on like in this complete madness for 2, 3 months. Somebody would hold him down and pray, and then he'd be normal again, and is speaking normally and talk. So those things would happen, and it was kind of a normal thing. And so the other thing that was normal is we would see witchcraft works throughout the streets. So you would see like a dead chicken with some liquor and some flowers and money. And initially, I didn't believe much on those things. I would say, like, let me just get the money and go buy some fun things for me to do when I was a kid. But when I started seeing that, I was like, don't touch that. I mean, this is real. And so uh, we saw a lot of that. In fact, my own family had some involvement in that at some point. And so I never been personally involved with it, but I know that grandparents at some point they had some involvement with it. And that has a real impact on you because uh, those things can influence the way you think, the way you act, behave, and the way you talk to people. And in fact, I've been to places with some people that were way more mature than I was, and they would say, "This person is under the influence," um, and I didn't know. And I was like, "Why? How do you know?" And it's like I just sense in my spirit this person is under the influence, and it was just crazy to see that. And my father-in-law, he's great at noticing those things um and praying over people. And we've seen and I'm saying the bad side, but there's the flip side to this. I've seen a lot of people coming out of that and is struggling through the process of coming out of that and waking up with sensing something there with them saying, You're not gonna leave this. You're mine now." And they're like, "Well, I I now follow someone greater than you." And going through that experience of, leaving this world of, witchcraft and moving into something new. And so to me, it's always been clear that there's a good side and there's an evil side, because it was clear, because I saw what it did to people. And nowadays it has become kind of cool and normalized that people have different ways to describe this, and it's like, nah, this demons is, it's a Greek word for power and explosion. It's not, and there's like the creatures of the force. No, it's just witchcraft. At the end of the day, I've seen both sides. And then later on, the way I feel like I matured a lot into this is that I because it used to scare me a lot, and then I came to a conclusion. I was like, man, if this thing exists, that tells me that God also exists, that the Mashiach also exists, and this thing is afraid of him, and the Mashiach is for me. And that's when it all flipped. I was like, I'm not scared anymore, but I'm not gonna go there and pick a battle with it. But I realized that I shouldn't be concerned, and I came to that conclusion. It was probably 17, 18. So I struggled a lot. It was really scary, and seeing people at church being possessed and pastors praying for it. And it was just that's why I'm telling you, there's no way I could just one day say, I don't believe in it anymore, because I've seen it. Um, and I've seen people even in my family, you know, being possessed for reasons for doing witchcraft and allowing that space in their lives where the enemy had access to, and going through the process of freedom, like, which is painful and difficult. Anyways, it's a little heavy, but it's common in certain areas. In fact, my last business in Brazil was built for solo professionals, and it was like online booking, payments, and things like that. And for a while there, the number one category that was making money with our platform, it was witchcraft. People would go online and pay for, I'm opening a new business. Would you do this service for me? And they would do this thing. And it was witchcraft. And I remember going to God, I'm like, that doesn't feel right. Something has to be done. And I didn't do anything, because even investors, they were like, yes, let's focus in that industry. I mean, if it's growing, let's make it happen. I'm like, all right, I don't want to do that. And then out of nothing, psychologists started picking up, and eventually it flipped. And I was like, yeah, now I have a new industry to focus on. Um, but now they have even different names, like black witchcraft or white witchcraft or pink witchcraft. And there's different names for it, but it's essentially different labels for the same thing at the end of the day. And and so I think it's still growing. And I thought it was just South America, to be honest with you, Luke. But here in the US, it's starting to pick up again. Also, and I see people talking about certain things. I see stickers on cars that are all symbols that are represent something. Most people, it goes unnoticed for most people. But if you know what that is, you can see, and you will see plenty of it. A lot of people, in fact, in our Facebook group in our region where we live, somebody posted about, actually a night that they were doing something. It was a witchcraft related thing. And there were so many comments there, people involved. And so that is to say, it's still growing. I've Not that I'm involved and I pay attention to it, but because I come from this background, it's something that catches my attention. But I know it's it's just still growing. In fact, I was coming out of Tractor Supply the other day. This lady started talking to me for no reason, but she's like, we're just talking. And she's telling me that she's visiting the cemetery because her husband died and so on. Long story, but she opened the box close to her husband's grave, and there's like all sorts of witchcraft in there. And she freaked out. She's like, I'm gonna get out of here because there's like all these things. And she really freaked out. And she was telling me the story, and I was like, man, it's just confirming to me that these things are becoming more and more normalized. And in fact, for the younger folks, it's becoming like cooler because Harry Potter and all these things that are normalizing witchcraft, and it's becoming like this cool thing people do, and it's fun, it's epic, but it again, it's just different labels for the same thing, and in Brazil, it's a common thing to see. I grew up seeing it, And here in the US, I never seen anybody being possessed or anything like that. But I'm seeing signs of people following that pattern. Um, and so, yeah, it's this strange thing.
It's kind of good that you saw the dark side of that so that you can recognize how evil it is.
Yes. And it's hard to be skeptical when you see with your own eyes because I'm naturally very skeptical about a lot of things. I like to get to the bottom of things and understand why. And like, is this scientific thing? Is this a natural thing? Is it really a spiritual thing? And I'm saying this because there's the other side of this too, like the church I used to go to, and most churches, in fact, they abuse a lot of the idea of God spoke to me, where this is the work of God, this is, and then it becomes overused to the point where it's not true anymore. It's just people using this as a way of communicating with others. And so I lost faith with the idea of like God is speaking to you, God is directing you in a certain way, and it took a lot for me to go back to believe again. And in fact, I feel like God is always like, well, I'm gonna remind you that I'm still here and I still speak to people because I've seen a lot of abuse inside the church in terms of like making everything spiritual when it's really not. It's it's just humans being humans. But when you see the obvious spiritual things, it's hard for you to then doubt that they exist. I've never doubted. It's just that it's hard sometimes for you to see the difference because again, people abuse those things also. And like I said, there's people that pretend they go to church and they pretend to be possessed and they want the attention and for some reason that I don't know why. And everybody's around them. Oh my gosh, let's pray and let's do this. And it's all pretend. But then there's cases where it's obvious because like an old lady cannot what old lady can throw a pea like that? Like, just grab it and throw it away as if it was a piece of paper. And so those things really caught my attention. And also, my dad was there, 7 guys, big guys, trying to hold her down, and she wouldn't stop. And so that was beyond normal. And the other thing that I saw a lot is people spinning, like spinning, just spinning, and it was not normal. It's so fast. It's so different. It was not normal. And so, I mean, and when it's fake, you can kind of see it. It's not supernatural. It's just a guy pretending to, or a lady pretending to do certain things, and you're like, that doesn't seem to be real. So I lost. That's why I'm saying I lost the faith in the institution because I saw a lot of the abuse in terms of things pretending that things are spiritual when they're not in both ways. Both when it's evil. Oh, I'm trying to do business with you and you don't want to close this contract with me. The enemy is working in your life, man. We need to make sure that you see things clearly. And that's not the enemy. It's just, it's not a good deal, you know? And so I've seen a lot of those things too. That made me very skeptical with the institution because people abused it. And I still think they do. Here in the US, they abuse it in a different way. And I think in countries where the poverty rate is higher, they abuse it more in a sense of like, I want to have authority and power over you. So I want you to believe that I have this supernatural or anointing that's more than anybody else. And I feel like in the US, it's more capital based, it's more, um, you know, influence based. And so I think it's different, but it still leads to the same thing, which is fake anointing, fake authority, and so on. So
Yeah, that's wrong. People need to be aware of all of saying this stuff or saying that they have this word from God, if they really don't. And it becomes just a Christianese way of speaking too. But I think that it can get mixed up, like what you're saying, and that's bad.
yeah, yeah. But on the flip side to that, I personally felt like God led me to a specific thing, and in business, both in business and in personal life. And a story that I like to tell is that back in 2013, I was working from home, and I've always tried to be sensitive to hearing God's voice. And it's something that you learn to do. I don't think it's a natural thing that happens easily. And I've got it wrong a bunch of times. But what I do is like I'm gonna believe, and if I'm wrong, it's okay. And one day I heard, I really felt like God was saying, go to that a specific Starbucks. There's someone there I want you to talk to. And I was like, this is definitely out of my, it's, this is me. But Lord, if it is you, okay, I'll do it. But here's the thing. As soon as I walk into this place, it has to be so obvious. I can't not deny it because I'm not going to walk up to someone and say something random. And so I got my stuff and I went to that Starbucks and it was cold. The windows were foggy. I walk into the Starbucks. I believed, but then I didn't, like maybe it's just something out of my head. And I looked at the corner. There's a couch. There's a guy seated there. And when the glass is kind of, uh, it's foggy and people can write on it. And so I looked on top of the guy's head and there's my name. And then I was like, okay, this is obvious. This is obvious. And that's when I got really nervous. My heart started going like 1,000 miles an hour. I started shaking because like, I don't do this. And I'm like having this internal debate. I'm like, this is not my thing. This is not what I do. I don't want to do this. I mean, this is weird. And and then I built up the courage to walk up to him and I said, look, do you believe in God? And I thought he's gonna say yes, and we're gonna bond on this. And he's like, no. I was like, okay. And then I was like, look, right on top of your head, there is a name. And he looked at it. There's a name. There's just short. There's Fran. And to be honest with you, I don't remember if it was my whole name or just part of it. I just remember getting my driver's license and showing it to him and saying, like, this is my name. And I explained to him I was at home. I didn't believe it. But here's what I have to tell you. And then I told him, and I said, look, he wants you to know that he is true and he's taking care of it. And it's hard and it's difficult. And then he started crying right in front of me. He started crying. He was melting. And so and that's when I got nervous because I don't know what to do when people cry in front of me. So I'm like, should I cry too? Should I just smile and shake his? I didn't know what to do. So I really fast, I just said, I hope you have a great day. Grabbed my stuff and left. And but I was like ecstatic inside the car. I was like, oh my goodness, what was it? And I called my wife and I was like, look, this happened. And so I know that God can do that. That Yah can speak to you, can lead you, and things can happen. But the problem that I have is that people sometimes do that for their own benefit. And they say, well, God is telling me that you need to close this contract with me because we're gonna, build wealth together. And I've lost faith in that nowadays. And I was like, if he spoke to you, maybe it would be a good idea to speak to me too, because I also have a relationship with him. so so maybe he would need to talk to me too. Uh, but I know these things happen, and I try to be sensitive to it. But I will never walk up to somebody and say, "God is telling me to sell your house and move to Montana," unless something obvious happens in a way that I cannot deny it. And I think, yeah, we'll do that, and we just have to be sensitive to it. But most of the times that I hear things like this, it's not. It's something basic, but it's very impactful to someone. Like, hey, he's at it. He wants you to believe in him and he's in control of this. That was enough to trigger something on him. I don't know what he's going through, but it spoke to him just like the lady saying, you got to read the whole verse. You're only reading half of it. That spoke to me. That's simple. That's it's almost silly, but it meant the world to me. And I think sometimes we think everything has to be the burning bush event, and it can be something simple um, that will change someone's life and make them look in the right direction. And nowadays, I try to be very sensitive to it, but I think that's when we can start moving into business because being in business and being in focused on growth and metrics and all of these things, it kind of make you grow cold to these things. Um, and you don't notice that you're growing cold and you're losing your relationship because you're just so focused on growth, metrics, people, hiring, leadership, all those things. And you forget that there's something that's priority and that you've learned that and that should stay as priority. Everything else kind of falls around it, but should stay priority. And so I still feel that still happens to me often. Like, and when I'm working in our property here, um, a lot of that happens. I lose stuff and I'm like, oh, yeah, would you please help me find this? And like, imagine losing a screw in in acres, and you have acres, and you lost that screw on your tractor. You won't. What part of the property would you? You don't know. And then sometimes I just pray, and I feel like God is saying something to me, and I say, well, if it is true, let me help me find this. And then I look down, it's right there in front of my foot, and I'm like, okay. I mean, there's no way it's a coincidence. And so I'm like, okay, I take that. I'll take that as a mission in my heart, and that has happened recently. And so there's ways that God still speaks to us. And I just think that we don't need to be focused on waiting for the burning bush event when it can be something as simple as, you got to sit down with your child more and teach the word more. You need to spend more time, you know, doing ABC with your family more. And it's something basic, but has a huge impact. And we just don't know what the impact is until years go by. And I just hope that one day I'll meet that guy again and we're going to be like, oh, remember that day? I never met him. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the story is, but I know something happened because he wouldn't cry for no reason. So something happened, and I was too uncomfortable to wait to hear it because I don't know what to do. I was like, what do I do? So I just left.
Well, it sounds like you did the mission that you needed to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's get into business then. All right, so you came into the Torah, you realized this stuff, your wife agreed eventually. Then what happened in the rest of your life? Talk to us about.
Well, yeah. So going back into business, I've always been involved into business. I've always, since I was 11, I would want something. My dad would say, well, if you sell this, then I'll get you that. And so I've always been, my head always worked in that direction. How do I create value so I can get value? And I wanted a soccer ball. My dad used to sell soccer balls. So he'd be like, sell 11, I'll give you one. And I would go out on the streets, sell 11 and get one. So my head was always worked in that way. And so before I came to the US, I was working for a company where we built websites for cities. And so at some point they were like, well, it's difficult. We got to go to travel 18 hours to sit down with the folks in that specific town and to just to update the website. Why don't we build something that they can do that themselves? That's the first CMS ever built, and we didn't even have that term back then. So we're building this thing, and that's when I got it deep into programming. And so I already had this thing that was running, and people were paying for it. And then when I moved to the US to meet my wife and eventually we got married, I didn't have anything because all of that stuff, I knew how to do it back there because I knew the language, I knew the culture. Then I'm here, I don't know how to speak the language, and I'm completely lost. And I was like, what am I going to do? So I ended up doing whatever I could that required the minimal amount of English possible, like delivering pizza, which turns out that it requires a lot of talking, and that actually helped me. And 2 years into it, I was still not being able to communicate well, and that really frustrated me. And I wasn't able to do work and to produce and to be productive and build businesses. And I remember one day being super frustrated, and my wife went out to work, and I'm walking on the street, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm still stuck. I can't really speak the language. And I saw this old man mowing the lawn, and I was like, and it was super hot, summer in Texas. And I was like, I'm just going to walk up to this guy and I need to practice. I'm going to walk up to him. I'm going to offer to mow the lawn for him if he is willing to just spare a few minutes of his day to talk to me and help me. So I offered, he took it, and I started mowing his lawn. He would talk to me and he would make fun of me. He would correct me. But I started getting more and more comfortable. And that's when I, I came together with another friend and we built a CMS for radio stations. And um,
Oh,
we started selling it to
can you define CMS,
content.
content management system,
Yeah,
for people?
yes, content management system, which basically means imagine a website. If you need to update this website, back in the days, you would have to have somebody that knows how to program to open the code and to update it. But a CMS made it so you would log in some place with a username and password, and you just fill out a form, and that update would be reflected into the website. So it was easy. Anyone could do it through a CMS instead of knowing how to program. And so we built the first one for radio stations. We had some success there. And we also had some legal troubles because it's all new. There's a lot of new stuff around that area. And then I moved on to build CMS for churches. And that's when I started selling this for churches. But man, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how people will take this, but it's really hard to do business with churches. Yeah, it's really, really hard. Like I would sell it to businesses, but selling it to churches was so hard. And I can get into the reasons why, but I struggled a lot with that. So I moved on. And I remember a friend of mine said, look, I have someone that might want this. Just come with me to this meeting. Just sell it to him. I didn't have any contacts. I went with him. And it turns out it was a nightclub. So I give the guy this this card with my name on it, and it has Colossians that says, everything you do as if unto the Lord. And I'm at a nightclub giving this guy my card, and he's looking at it and was like, "What are you doing here, man? This is not your place." And I was like, "Whoa!" And I explained it to him, and these guys are willing to pay 10 times more, and they're like, "Okay, would you build it?" And I remember going back home and like conflicted. Should I build this thing for these guys? I mean, this is a nightclub. We ended up not doing it, but that is to say that I found that it was a lot easier to do business outside, and I started doing that. And eventually, I built a product that was called, terrible name by the way. It's called You Feed Me Back. Again, that name, but it was essentially a product for designers to receive feedback from top level designers. So we had people from Twitter, from Google, from LinkedIn that provided feedback, and those mid-level designers would pay a fee. So if I want a feedback from you, I would upload my design and I would say, hey, look, I would love to get your feedback on it. You'd have your prices. I would pay. And in your own time, it would go into the page and provide the feedback on my design and explain what you would do different. And that was the first product here in the US that actually started picking up. And eventually that product didn't generated around 300,000. And it was a big win for me. I was like 22, something like that, 23. So I was really happy. That was great success. I was like, that's awesome. And took some time to figure out what to do next. And eventually we built something that up until this day is still live, which is a product for salons, helping people book appointments, have a website, manage their clients, coupons, and things like that. And we started selling it, just me and my wife. And we built it, started selling it, and eventually it had some growth. And we had really great growth until COVID. And a lot of people just abandoned the industry, being hairstylists. They decided to be something else. And so we lost a lot of users there. But in between that time, uh, we launched that product in 2014. So between 2014 and COVID, we also did a lot of consultation to brands such as Subway, Gatorade, Pepsi on product. And some of the work we would do is to help improve ratings and growth. Like there's this brand that came to us and they had 2.5 stars on the Apple Store because people couldn't buy sandwiches there. And so our job was to understand the reason why, to fix it. And eventually they got to 4.5 stars and they increased their selling through the app way more. I don't remember, but it was like almost 20x what they had initially. And so it was an interesting process of working with the team. And so I would be managing my life between consultation and our own products that we built, such as Beerlawn. And eventually we built this product in Brazil. And it was the first time we were doing this as a funded company. So we're going to VCs and we're raising money. And I'm working with great people. In fact, some of the smartest people I've ever worked at that time. And I felt like I was behind in every way because there's everybody was just so smart. People from Harvard, people from Berkeley, and I'm like, man, I really felt like the underdog, and I was just trying to catch up. The whole time, I just felt like I was trying to catch up to everyone there. But the one thing I had that most people didn't have there was that I had more time in business, and I could see things a little different. And to me, it was more experience than theory. And they had a lot of the theories because they were just recently graduated, so it's their first business. So it was the perfect picture for us to raise funds. And so we raised for that specific company, we raised about $3.5 million, and we started building this company with 25 people. Um, but now here's how it connects with and Torah and all that. Now you're managing people and you have investors, board meetings, and you have all the pressure that you get in that early morning prayer. It starts becoming like, it becomes more like, I can't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow, and then I'll do it tomorrow, and so on. And 4 years and a half into this, and I realized that I drifted away, not in a sense of like, I'm now gonna eat pork. None of that. Everything is fine, but you just cool off. You're not as curious as you used to be. You're not. Like, I remember Pisa being one of the best holidays for us, one of the best feasts. So much joy, so much enjoyment in our family, and it became more of a burden. Oh man, we have to do Pisa. Okay, let's prepare for Pisa. And that's one of the things that I noticed. The joy was gone because I was so focused in building this business. We got to sell this business. We got to grow this business. And we're having like we got hundreds of thousands of people using this product, and we're dealing with investors, dealing with people in the team that are oftentimes disagreeing with what you're saying. And there's so much, and it's like politics everywhere, politics inside of the company, politics with investors, politics with users, the way you talk in public podcasts that you speak, all those things become a way that can mess things up. So you have to be super attentive to the way the posts you make on social media, on LinkedIn, and there's all those things that are all the pressures that are coming towards you, and you stop thinking Torah. It's like you just stop thinking in those sense. I mean, in the sense of this is the most important thing in my life, and I think that's where I drifted. And during that time, I was really studying as much as I could about founders and about startups and about how underdogs that built this and that. And here's one thing that I've learned during this period of time. I met a lot of founders and founders that are building huge companies, and it's crazy that you sit down with these guys for 20 minutes and the amount of learning you get is it's just like reading 50 books because they have so much experience, so much time into this that when they look into your business, they all the feedback is right on. And so you look into that and you're like, I gotta be like that. You gotta learn this. But the thing that I find is that we over romanticize founder stories. And then when you get to the story itself, you get close enough, you see that the story that's being told, it's not exactly the way it was. It's romanticized. It sounds really great. But behind, there's always things that are not as great, like folks taking hardcore medication just to stay afloat. The hard folks taking certain drugs just to be at top performance, um, and messing up their relationship with people that are incredibly important in their lives, or that underdog story isn't really an underdog story as someone that comes from a certain group of people that allowed all of those things to happen. And it sounds like an underdog story, but it's not. So I've started seeing a lot of that as a pattern. And I was like, man, I'm chasing after this thing that might not even be real, like being an underdog and being able to build this. Later on, I came to the conclusion that there are, in fact, people that are great business founders and they haven't lost their minds in that process and they're great people. But the percentage is so small because the ones that we usually put on the pedestal, those are not the ones we want to follow as an example, to be honest. The ones that are the most famous, they're not the ones that we should be looking at. And the ones that are usually great, they're building great things, you usually never hear about them. They're behind the curtains, they're behind the scenes. And so to me, talking to investors that are, even founders that are investing in our company that had great success, and you sit down and you hear their stories, sometimes it's not as great. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's very inspiring. But you just see that it's it's they compromised on things that I would personally never want to compromise. Because what I found is that we compromise little by little. It's never like overnight you're gonna say, well, I'm gonna do this thing that's very unethical or that goes against, God's instructions for our lives. It's usually little by little. Okay, yeah, I don't like this, but okay, it's fine. It's necessary. And then following month, just a little by little. When you look back, you've compromised so much that you're like, man, I'm so far from where I should be. And so and then it goes back to what you and I have discussed before. It's we allow the world to define what success is. And if we do that, the only way to attain it is the world's way. And so by doing that, you compromise on God's way. And so I heard a friend saying something to me last week that really impacted me. He said, you either win with the world or you overcome the world. And to me, I was winning with the world and I was letting the world define what success was. In fact, when I came out of that environment, I started a new company and I brought in some of the best people I know, people that I love to work with. And I noticed that I was being harsh. I was acting the way I was acting out there. And I was like, man, this is not what I'm in business for. And I feel like I'm still detoxing from all of that. But the point is, it's easy for us to get lost looking into the stories of great founders, great business owners, but we don't know the details of their story and they have compromised things that we should never compromise. And the question that I keep asking myself is, would I be okay if I have an okay result in my life in growth, but I have done the right things for my family between me and Yah? I'm aligned with his ways versus achieving all of these dreams that I've always had, but all the other things are compromised. Which path do I want to take? And being comfortable with the idea of saying, the way I look at it now is, Lord, if it's not meant for me to have it, I don't want to have it. Because coming from the past that I came from, I know that certain success could throw me right into a path that I don't want to be in. And so sometimes we are just saved from success and we're chasing this thing and it's almost like, you should not have this. I don't want to lose you. And I really feel like for me, a lot of times it was like I get so close, so close. Like I built a product back in 2017 for realtors. And we're about to close this massive deal. It was like a $1.5 million deal a year. And we're like excited and we're like, this is going to work out. And right at the end, and by the way, the folks we're doing business with, they're all like Christian groups. And they're like, can I get access to the platform before we close the deal with you guys? And I just need 3 months so that I can show the rest of my group. It's a, it's a big company. It's the whole US. This company is everywhere, but they needed access to show the rest of the leaders and so on. So I was really naive and I was like, yeah, go ahead and have access. Here's an account. Go ahead, go at it. And what happened was they went there and they rebuilt the whole thing with their own resources. Then they came back and they sent us a cease and desist letter and said, look, this is our idea now. And you guys didn't do anything regarding like, registering or anything else. So take it offline. Otherwise we're going to have to sue you guys. So it's like, man, that was really dirty. That was really dirty. We're so close. And I feel like and it was really naive from me to say, here's access, go look at it. But the point is, there's been so many cases where I've been so close. And when I look back, I just think if that had happened, who would I be today? And I know that probably with the experiences I've had between there and now, probably not the person I want to be, probably not the father I want to be, or, the husband I want to be. And so I don't look at it with this, I messed up. I look at it more like, man, I was delivered from this situation. I was saved from success. And this is kind of the way I look at it. So redefining what success is has been a big thing in the past 2 years for me. Understanding that success is not just what we see in the stories from founders and people that worked with us in the past. And this past Sukkot, for instance, it was a great example of that. And I haven't I haven't felt joy celebrating God's feast in a while. And then Sukkot comes along and we're just keeping it simple, just me and my family. And we're sitting around the fire pit. And I just felt that again. And I was like, man, I'm back. You know, I am back, and it was like a joy for no reason. It's not like everything is going perfectly fine right now. It's just that I was joyful, and I remember seeing my son sitting on the chair, is eating his thing, and I was like, "What's going on there, Davey?" And he's like, "I'm in my happy place right now." And to me, it was like, I am back. This right here, this is what success is for me, and I almost lost it. Like I was so close to losing it, and that's why now I'm trying to redefine it, and I'm not going back to God and saying, "Well, can you show me what success in fact is?" Because I've I've been filling my head with all the other stuff that defines what success is according to the world, that I've lost sight of what you meant for me. And I'm not saying that building wealth is not good, but in most cases that I've seen, people that went from zero to billions, I've met only one person that got to that point, but it's too quick and it's too much. And no healthy human being get to that point so quickly and become a normal person. It has to be compounded. It has to be slowly, and it has to be generational. That's the way I see it now, because it gives you time to adjust. It gives you time for your family to adjust. It's not overnight, and if it happens overnight, it's gonna drive you mad, and I don't want that. And so whatever I am building in my life, I'm willing to take the rest of my life building it right than building something that overnight will be worth a bajillion dollars. And now you have all these problems to solve and you're dropping the ball in the most important thing in your life. So if you think about it, some of the biggest people, biggest name we see in our culture today, from basketball players to business founders to this guy that runs 200 miles and everybody admires him for being strong, full of grit. And then you see what his daughter is talking about him, and you're like, he failed on the most important thing. How is that success? How is that beneficial? You see Steve Jobs building this beautiful company, saying that he would never do certain things, and then he dies. And then this new guy comes in and he does that thing that he said he would never do it. I'm like, what was the benefit of it at the end? And so to me, it has that perspective is changing. I'm not saying that it changed. It's still in process of changing, because I'm very attracted to the world of underdog story, stick to it, make it happen, change the world. And it's very easy to pull me into it. And I'm trying to stay grounded and being like, I can have growth in this direction, or I can take my time here. And it will take a while. It will be uncomfortable, but it's okay because it gives me time to be the father I want to. It gives me the headspace to be the husband I want to be. Because business is all consuming. It takes everything of you. It's not just like, oh, from 9 to 5. It's not. It's 24/7, even in Sabbath. Even when you say you're resting, you're still thinking. And so how do you separate these things, and how do you make it so it's acceptable? And the other thing is we stop really relying on Yah. Back in the days we'd plant and we pray and like, Lord, would you please send rain? So there is this reliance on God. And nowadays it's like you learn metrics, you learn scientific method, how to apply this into business. You know how to experiment, how to create thesis, how to build teams. And then it's all you. At the end of the day, there's no piece, no part on it that you're saying, I can go past here. Lord, would you please, please, if it is your will, would you bless this? And we don't do that anymore because we can. And now with AI and all the new technological advancements, we're just self-reliant. And I'm going back to be like, I got to stop being so thirsty for knowledge, so thirsty for success. And I just need to build a foundation that makes sense and grow slowly. And that's counterintuitive and counterculture. But to me, that's where I feel like I can do both the right way, which is serving the creator of all things while being a great father as much as I can be, a husband, and then building a business with people, but putting them as priority, not the profit, because it's easy, again, to put people as secondary thing, as a resource, as opposed to being God's children. And so I'm re-educating myself in that process, and I'm not there yet, but it's been a struggle.
So I too have been kind of wooed by the founder Cinderella story. And I watch I listen to the Founders podcast. I find it so entertaining, but I also have noticed the consistent through line of all these guys ruining their lives, marrying like they keep getting divorced, they alienate their children, they aren't there for their families, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the huge founders. I mean, most of them. So as you move forward to still kind of aim for big business success, have you put any safeguards in place so that you won't go that way if the big success happens?
That's excellent question. And no, I should. I think the best way to do this, and this is me saying it now. If we talk again in a year, I might say something different because I'm still in the process of learning and figure things out. But I think best way to do this is community, having people around you. Because, like, to me, when I was back there at my previous business, it was noticeable. I was starting to talk differently. I was more like, if people are talking Torah, I'm distracted. I'm not deeply into it like I used to be. Because, like, I remember having Torah discussions and we're like so passionately into it. And I'm like, oh man, this is great. How about this? How about that? And then you're there and you're just like a zombie in the middle of this conversation. Everybody's having this wonderful time and you're just like, your head is somewhere else. So there's signs that are there. And I think having a strong community that can point you back in the direction it should be, I think it's essential. And this is a thing that I struggle a lot with because in my region, there isn't a lot of Torah followers. I have great friends, in fact, that are like an hour and a half away. But it's really hard for you to go on Sabbath, for instance, and drive an hour and a half and then another 1 hour and a half back home. We've tried that, but it's really hard. And then it's no resting anymore. It's just a lot of work and it's difficult. And it's people we love to be with, but it's hard to drive an hour and a half on Sabbath. And so, but I feel very privileged because Yah has blessed me with great folks, even though they're not Torah observant, but they truly, truly love Yah. And it's noticeable. And so being part of these groups, there's multiple groups now. It's just helpful because they can notice, like, hey, I noticed that you've been a little distracted or you're not making comments about ABC anymore. And I I have a friend. He's the guy that's 1 hour and a half away. He always sends me a message out of nowhere. And it's always very important moments of my life. It's like, hey, I've been thinking about you. How are things going? And I think community in that sense is really, really important. And the fact that during that time I was really detached, I didn't have anybody to keep me accountable. And so it was really easy to drift away without even noticing because I didn't notice. It's not like I was knowing what was happening. I was just the way I see it is I was sleeping or was just moving away. Have you seen folks, floating on the beach on that floaty and they just fall asleep and they drift away? I feel like I was like that. I was dreaming and I was deep into this dream and drifting away. And but when you have folks around you, they will be like, "Hey, dude, wake up. Let's go back to shore." And so I think the best way, and this is what I'm trying to construct now and build around me, accountability, is really having folks around you that can call you out when they notice this. Because even the way I talked changed. When you're around people that are using certain language, you don't notice. It just you adopt it without seeing it. You don't know how to express yourself if it's not through that same language or vocabulary. And so I think the best way is having folks around you. And I have not created safeguards yet, but it's something I must do at some point. And I'm really focused now on being in community so that I can have accountability with people. And I'm trying to be more, and there's people that I'm like, hey, if I'm not sending you texts every day and sharing with you what I'm learning and scriptures that I'm reading, and please ask. And we have that between the two of us, and we try to do that. But that's why it's a dream to build businesses with other believers. That is the dream because you don't have to explain to anybody why Friday night you're off. You don't have to do all these things so that people know that you're off. You don't have to do all these things so that Sukkot you have a week off. because they just know. And that to me, that is the dream, to have a team of believers that are with you, they're building things with you. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I pray about this and I'm like, how wonderful would that be to be surrounded and being able to be accountable to each other while building the same mission together. I think that would be wonderful. But overall, I still don't know what's the best way other than being part of a community that can keep you accountable.
We had talked before in the interview, and I read your article, which really outlines this problem. And so I will link it here because I want people to be able to read that. But man, yeah, finding the solution seems like the hard part. Like, I guess accountability sounds like the right answer.
Yeah, and the next thing is I'm I'm really trying to find more folks that are building businesses that are going through because it's not a this is not just me. It's a lot of people. In fact, some people are building businesses, some people are working for corporate world and they're having to deal with this as well. And some people are just trying to get out of corporate world so they can be better parents, so they can homeschool, homestead, and all that. And I just keep on praying, how could we do this intelligently and support each other? And in fact, last week I had a meeting with a guy, a business guy at a big business, and he's a big believer. And he's telling me about this thing that he's doing, like instead of competing, how do we find a way to collaborate? How do we work together? And he's telling me the story that he's expanding his business to Colorado. And there's a bunch of businesses there that are placing bids for this big contract. And he met some of the guys, some of the competitors that are struggling with a certain thing. And he's like, "Hey, let me help you fix this so you can run your business better." They're like, "Why would you help me with that? I mean, we're competitors." It's like, "I'm sending you this contract. This is how you fill it out. This is how you get your employees to fill it out, and so forth." He helped them. And it sounds very counterintuitive to do that. And then later on, he's telling me that he's closing businesses in Colorado, but instead of sending his team there and building a whole new team, he works with this guy now. And now they collaborate and they're sharing, the benefits of that. I was like, this is so incredible. Instead of, putting your gloves on and say, let's compete, let's make this happen. Now they found a way to collaborate and to grow together. And I think in in our community, we should be able to find ways to do that as opposed to, you know, I've been to a lot of business meetings back in the days when I was going to church and we had these big business breakfasts. And it felt like a network event where everybody's hustling, trying to get business. And like you would be in a group of five people, somebody would present their service. And then we break out. Then this other guy would say, his service is great, but I can do better if you do ABC. And then it's almost like this dirty competition that's happening underneath the table. And I've always felt that was a little almost unethical. And I think we should be able to find better ways to do this, to collaborate, to say, you're great at this. I'm great at that. How do we combine these two things? And how do we make so sure that both of us can have benefit out of it? And when I was working in the work with VCs and so on, that we came together with a group of founders and we were like, let's all pitch in some equity from our companies. So if your company fails but might succeed, at least you have a little bit of my company and so forth. And we did that. And it was a fantastic idea. It was an amazing idea because now we're relying on each other. I want you to succeed because I own a piece of what you're doing, while at the same time, you also want me to succeed. And we're now sharing resources. We're now making sure that you have what you need and so forth. And I thought that was incredible because it's not just you paying me for me to coach you. It's more like we're now in the same mission. I own a piece of what you're doing and vice versa. It's not a big piece, it's a small piece, but enough to make it significant. So I want you to grow. And so, how do we do that in the body? How do we do that as believers? How do we help each other in a way that we can grow together? And I still don't have the answer to this, but this is something that I'm constantly thinking about because I'm seeing a lot of folks saying, I want to get out of corporate world. I'm tired of, there's a bunch of layoffs. I never know if I'll have a job tomorrow. How do I make sure that I can build something and grow and have time with my kids, be able to homestead, homeschool, and so forth. I don't have the answer, but this is an interesting problem that's why I sent you that email. And I was like, man, this is such an interesting problem that if given the right people, it could be solved. I just don't know the right way to do it yet.
Well, what's next for you now? What are you working on now? Do you want to talk about anything like that and what you're looking forward to?
Sure. So now I am experimenting with different things. And one of the things I'm doing is a product called northflow.io, which is a product built for podcasters to help them manage their podcast and also podcast agencies to manage different teams and manage multiple shows. So we have users that are managing like 60 shows. And the way they used to do in the past is they used ClickUp, Calendly, Google Forms, a bunch of different tools and spreadsheets, Google Docs, and all of those things. Try to manage all those clients, getting requests for editing and all sorts of things from all sorts of places. And we're bringing it all under one place, making it easier into one workflow so that you can have all your 60 clients in one single place and you'll see all the projects that are taking place in one place and making it easier. Now we're starting to build this in phases. So the first phase is nothing innovative. It's just like any project management system you see out there. But now that we have this foundation, we're now starting to build workflows that are pre-built, and that's based on all the best practices. So we spend a lot of time talking to agencies, to creators, try to understand what is the workflow that you have today, what's good about it, what do you hate about it, and then we get all of that information into the lab, and we try to implement that into the product, so that for folks that are doing this, instead of having to try to figure out what's the best way, it's already part of the product as it works. So you're not connecting things, creating template with Notion, connecting via Zapier and all these other tools. It's out of the box. It's the product with the workflow. It's not just the software. It's the knowledge of how to do certain things in the best way possible already embedded into it. So that we're getting into this phase of building these workflows and making it easier. And so that's one thing I'm working on the side. I'm always experimenting with ideas, helping out friends with different businesses ideas, and sometimes it's just really just basic marketing stuff that we can help. And sometimes, in fact, I'm also offering. I've been working with a specific company. In fact, this company I mentioned that I had this conversation with a friend last week. It's one of the companies that we provide consultation for, and sometimes they're about to have a growth and to expand. But in order to have growth, you need to fix your operations and make sure your operation is smooth and your team can work well together. And and that's one of the things we offer. That's one of the things I've always done, working in operations. So we do a little bit of consultation. And on the side, I also play around with the idea of finding great businesses with believers and saying, is there anything that I can help you build to help you grow? Or is there anything I can invest to help you grow? And and sometimes we play around that idea in terms of, well, maybe if you build a software that will help you, um, grow faster and have a process that's smoother, and then you can bring more people, and it's easier to onboard, it's easier to provide your service. Maybe that will help you scale faster because you have demand, but you don't have process. So sometimes I come in and I look into that as an opportunity for either an investment or a partnership. And so I do a little bit of that as well. So I'm a little all over the place right now, but I'll be focusing on Northflow for a little while. But like I mentioned, I don't want to focus too much on one specific thing and just have this explosive growth. I At this phase right now, I just want to experiment with things and see what works well, understand how to work together with other believers, how to help, how to be useful in that sense of how can I help in your operations, how can I help you grow, and see if there's anything there that it can be useful. And I even mentioned uh, that's why I suggested one of the segments on the show for and I'm calling it the corporate exodus, because how can we help other believers leave corporate world and build their business that they can rely on each other and grow that thing and become a business that they can have Shabbat without being worried, or being able to take a week off on Sukkot and so forth. And so I'm experimenting with this. I don't know where it's going to go. It's all new, and it's all like about a year. And so that's kind of where I am now. But I'm not. I work behind the curtains, so people will not hear about me, and I kind of like that. So there isn't a lot about me anywhere except like business in general. But um, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
That's great, man. Man, do you have any thoughts that you would like the Torah audience to hear? Like from your experience in this quote unquote movement or understanding of the word.
Yes, and this thought that I'll share with you guys, it's based on my own experience and the things I've done that didn't work out really well. I think that and I'm gonna start by connecting to my story. When I came to Torah, I wanted everybody to know about Torah. All my friends that are going to church, I wanted them all to know this. It was so special to me. And that phase kind of went away. And then I got into a different phase, which I find a lot of Torah believers in that phase, which is, I don't know a better way to describe this, but I'm just going to say it this way and we can kind of adjust it as we go. Some of the folks that I've met, they kind of look down on folks going to a Sunday church. Like they're messing up. They're wrong. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm saying a lot of people really love Yah. They just haven't come to that conclusion yet on how to love him. And it is our job to truly love on them and to witness to them. And most of all, to pray for them every day so that they will also get to experience what loving Yah really means. And so I've went through this phase where I got really mad at every pastor that I'll see preaching something silly. And I'm switching more and I'm not saying that's easy. It's pretty hard actually to be more loving in a sense of, and I'm saying I'm using the word love, which is for people that know me, it's a word that I don't use easily because I don't understand love in terms of affection. I see it more in terms of what are we doing for these folks, and the way I see it is we need to witness. We need, and the way I used to do it is all the special events, all the Moedims, I would bring folks in, and uh, and then what I realized is that I was taking away from my family to explain that to these folks that didn't understand the Moedims at all. And then I was like, this is not the best way because I'm taking away from my family. So I stopped doing that and just focusing on my family throughout this time. But then being deeply involved with them, loving on them, and also being loved by them. I have friends that are holding me by the hand when I'm not doing well, but I am praying for them. And I'm praying so that they will too get to experience this because coming to Yah and his ways, it's not about being successful, getting it right in business, having a lot of money, having influence. And we all know this. In fact, some of the people that I know that have taught me so much in the Torah, nobody know their names. They're just humble people, but they're studying it. They're seeking Yah with all they have. So all of that to say the message would be that we need to be better at praying to our friends that are out there. They truly love Yah, but they haven't found the path here yet. And it's not knowledge that's going to bring them here. It is not us showing it into the word. It is the work of God's Spirit that will change their perspective, that will spike the curiosity, just like it happened to me and then most of the Torah followers that I've ever met. It was it wasn't because they read something and it's like, oh, that's what it is. It starts inside. And so no matter how hard you're trying to explain something, if that work inside is not being done, they won't see it. And so our job really is to pray consistently so that our friends can also get to experience the goodness of our God through the Torah, which is available to us. And it's not riches and all these things, but it's much better. And in my opinion, I mean, I would not exchange this for anything else. And I want them to experience it. So my message would be let's be consistent in loving our friends and praying for them so they may one day experience this as well.
I think that's so important, man. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing, man. Sure thing.
And And Fran, thank you so much for giving us your story. I appreciate it.
Hey man, thank you for having me. And again, I don't do this often, so feel free to edit it and remove anything. I won't be offended in any way, shape, or form. So, and giving me feedback because I know I'll have to do this a couple more times as I go forward into the world of podcasting.
No, it's great. It was a blast, man.